I think that Amanda Seales. I don't think that Amanda Seales should have done Club Shay Shay.
Me either.
Apparently, she is the one who. I think we said this on Friday. She's the one who asked Shannon Sharp to be on Club Shay Shay. And then I know in the last couple of days she's come out and said, because maybe people have asked this question too, why did you do this? And she said because she thought it was a safe space. I don't know why she thought Club Shay Shay was a safe space. I don't know why if she was looking for a safe space, that was the place she felt she should have gone. To me, that seems a little misguided, or like we're not getting the full story, because you went on Club Shay Shay for it to be a safe space. Now, before let me just, if the Essence CEO won't let you interview him, if places like BET won't invite you, I do understand that maybe the options are limited, but you thought Club Shay Shay, where Shannon Sharp don't even know how to run his show, was a safe space?
So apparently that's not the only place she reached out.
Okay.
So, she spoke since this episode came out. Shannon Sharp spoke since this episode came out. This weekend on the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden says Amanda Seales and her team reached out to him as well. And the word is basically she was trying to find a black media place she could go and speak her piece. So Joe says he said no. Although he would love to interview her, he told them he's not sure it's worth it for him. And he basically said this is exactly what he means, because he's happy that she was able to go.
Oh, I was saying this meaning what?
He said everything that's happened since the interview came out, because she went on Club Shay Shay where she went and asked to go, and basically has bashed Shannon Sharp since. And said it wasn't a safe space. He was combative, and she said a bunch of things about him, which I'll get back to that in a minute. But Joe is saying all of this stuff that's happening afterwards, which he obviously had no way of knowing would happen. He just said he felt like this type of stuff is why he declined the interview, because although he would like to talk to her, look at everything that kind of comes with just even sitting with her. He said, could you imagine if it was me and her alone on camera? Like, it probably would have been a shit show. So I say that to say Joe's opinion I don't really care about. I only say all of that to say it seems like she was reaching out to multiple media sources to see where can I go, who will accept me. Not about it being a quote unquote safe space.
Well, right, because I was just about to say, like, no knock to Joe Budden, and that wasn't a knock to Shannon Sharp either. I just don't see the connection there. But I don't know why you would think the Joe Budden podcast would be a safe space.
Right, it's not.
It's not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it was about safe. I thought it, based on what he said.
I mean, that's
if what he's saying is true. I know, and that's what I'm saying. If what he's saying is true, it paints a different picture. It seems like you just was trying to sit with anybody black who would have you, not anybody black, but any black media outlet that would have you and welcome you. That's what it seems like based on what he's saying. That gave here? More context.
Is she safe here?
Is she safe here? If Amanda Seales want to come up here and chat, I will gladly have our first weeknight's guest and let her come roast me, because that's what it would be. Because what I have to say, well, she's not going to be happy when she comes here, because what I will say is she has contradicted herself multiple times, because she did the interview and said when they hugged, it took a while for me to warm up and feel safe, and I feel good now. Come give me a hug. And Shannon was hesitant to hug her. He was the one that was like, no. I tried to give you a dap. When you got here, I tried to hug you. You wouldn't hug me. Then I tried to give you a dap. You wouldn't give me a dap. Now you want a hug? I don't know. And he even looked around like, is this a good idea? But he hugged her at her request. Then you leave and say it wasn't a safe space. He contradicted me. He tried to be combative. All of these things. You basically shit on him.
Right.
Then you go on your podcast because I saw a clip where she's saying she watched the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And after seeing the episode, she sees how she could come across as combative, how she could come across as argumentative. She says all the things that people are saying about her and then says, but I don't think that's true. Wait a minute, hold on. You see it, but you don't think it's true. Which
Well,
one is it?
she said what she's saying is I could see how y'all could think that even though that's not what it is.
If you could see something and say, hey, I could see how people see this, then that there's probably some truth to it. One, and two, you probably have some work to do. We all have
It
work
feels
to
very
do. That's
Kanye.
not an offense to her. But if I watch weeknights back and say, man, I can see why people say I'm an asshole. Man, I can see why people say I'm aggressive. Then you probably got some work to do. I probably have to fix that if I want to fix it. If I don't want to come across those ways, then there's probably some time to, get to work on how can I not come across this way. If you give a fuck. If you don't, then you don't, which
Well,
leads to my next point.
that's usually that's usually a big factor whether a person cares or not.
But if you don't care, then you also can't say a lot of the things you're saying. It kind of becomes the Chris Brown thing where you can't complain and keep doing the same shit.
Right. Well, I, I think something that should be noted is that she, I think the same day or the day after Club Shay Shay came out, she released an episode of her podcast, Small
Mhm.
Doses, with Amanda Seales. And she speaks about an experience she had fairly recently with her then boyfriend, where she was assaulted. She dealt with a sexual assault, and I think maybe this is a time where I'm not saying she shouldn't go on her podcast. I think her podcast is probably very healing for her in some ways. I feel like as a podcaster, like sometimes you just like this is an outlet in itself. So I don't have an issue with her talking about her experience on her own podcast, but I do think that you're playing a dangerous game when you're still dealing with the effects of something so huge and something so traumatic. I think it's a dangerous game to then shop around to see where you could go to have a conversation. Because if I don't know if any of this is affecting her in terms of like the way that she's delivering some of it, the way that she's speaking about certain things. And I don't think she has to share, just to be clear, she does not have to share anything about her experience. The same way I said, I don't think she has to share anything about autism or anything like that. That is her personal business. If she decides to share it with us, then cool. If not, cool. But
Right.
what I think was dangerous here was trying to go, especially to places like Club. I am not trying to be disrespectful. I swear to you, I have a lot of respect for Shannon Sharp. I think he could be a better interviewer, but I have a lot of respect for what he's done over the last several months in growing Club Shay Shay. And I have a lot of respect for uh, Joe Budden. Most people don't know. I have heard every single episode of the Joe Budden podcast until Rory and Mal left. I heard every single one. When I
Mhm.
first had an interest in podcasts and podcasting, that was one of the places I went to. And I went It's not the only podcast I did this with, but this is one of them where I went back and I listened to where they started all the way through to where they were, because I don't listen to it consistently now for reasons that we don't need to get into. But
Right.
so it's not to disrespect them in any way, but as a Black woman who is struggling with certain things and is having issues in Hollywood, and the Joe Budden podcast and Club Shay Shay is not the place to go. And I just wonder, like, is she in a space right now where she needs to kind of just stay off of the interviews, especially the ones in places where it isn't a space for Black women? It isn't a space that was created for Black women, or it doesn't mean that they don't care about Black women or anything like that. I just think that the places you go
Mhm.
will matter. Like Essence going to Essence will probably feel like a warm hug. Maybe not for her, but just for a Black woman going to someplace like Essence, or like Unbothered, or which is now owned by Essence, but or Ebony or something like that might feel like a warm hug compared to
Oh,
Joe
that was the
Button.
other place.
Oh,
She
she's
said
talking
she
about
never got
Ebony.
invited to Essence Women's Weekend. Is that what it's called?
Essence Women in Hollywood. Yeah,
There
so
you go.
using Essence as an example is not a good example with Amanda
Not for
Seales.
her, but in
But
general.
but in general, when you're talking about Black women, yeah, I think that it's relevant to say that there are spaces that probably feel a lot more comfortable, and you probably feel a lot more relaxed, and you probably feel like, oh, you're talking to one of your homegirls or one of your homeboys, as opposed to going to Club Shay Shay or JBP. And again, not a knock to them. I just feel like it's probably the way that, certain Black men feel when they go to Club Shay Shay or they go to the Joe Budden podcast. They probably feel a level of comfort there that they may not feel in another space.
Yeah, I think I totally understand what you're saying. I also see another side
Mm-hmm.
where Joe just did an interview with Candace Owens, and that seemingly was successful. And Shannon Sharp recently did the interview with Monique, and that was very successful. So I see that side as well, where this is not a space created for Black women, but here are two controversial Black women in the media space, in the Hollywood space, who went on these platforms and had a successful time, um,
Yeah.
and were able to speak freely, because Candace wasn't ridiculed, Monique wasn't ridiculed, none of them were degraded or anything. It seems like from the public optics, like they both had a great experience. Monique afterwards was very thankful to Shannon Sharp and has given him a lot of praise. And there's been no backlash from Candace about her experience on the Joe Budden, which she didn't do the podcast. They did a separate interview. But I could see that side as well, where no, this is not a space
Yeah.
created for women. Like maybe Angela Yee's what's her thing called?
I don't know, but I know what you're talking about. And I was also thinking Angie Martinez,
Right. Maybe those, so
um,
those might be better
because
because those, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I agree. Those are probably better. Maybe something like that. I wish I could remember what Angela Yee's was called, but Angela Yee has her own platform. Maybe that would have been better. Yeah, Angie's a good example. I totally agree with that, but I could see the other perspective of where these two quote unquote controversial Black women just went on these platforms and had a success and seemed to be very comfortable. So I
Yeah.
could see that as well.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know. I don't know what the right thing is here. But because if you're being shut out, then, and your options are limited.
Hmm.
There's that. Um, But yeah, so I don't really know how to. I think that I think she kind of maybe needs to. I'm not trying to silence her. I just want to be clear. But because like I said, I think her going on her podcast and doing all her whatever she wants to do, I think is more, to me, seems more valuable than doing this. Um, just because, just from a personal standpoint, from like a person to person standpoint, being able to realize that sometimes what people need is not this, or not to feel like people are piling on her, or not to feel like people don't understand her, like to feel further misunderstood is frustrating. And she spoke about, having a hard time, having suicidal ideations, things like that. I just, at this point, I just feel like, okay, while I don't agree with everything that she's done or said, I do think that it sounds like she's in a season, and she said, like, she's come over the hump from a lot of things that she's was dealing with. But I
Right.
just wonder, maybe if, there are certain things that are still going on. We all always have something going on, right? So
Yeah.
maybe this is a season of, maybe this is not the road to go down right now, like with the Club Shay Shays and the Joe Buttons of the world. And I'm sorry that I keep putting Joe Budden's name into it, because he didn't
Well,
actually
he
do
did
the
it. He
interview,
did it
but
himself.
he
He spoke
mentioned it.
about it.
But yeah, I just don't feel like this was productive. I don't, for her, I don't feel
Mhm.
like whatever her goal might have been, I don't know that she accomplished that.